So we're here with Pat Williams, author of 92 books, co-founder of the Orlando Magic. And Pat, you had 7 ideas about leadership. I wanted to drill in on a couple of them. I think, and we were talking last night, this idea that we're first and foremost teachers. Talk a little bit about that.
I think that's really what leaders do, Verne. I think that at the end of the day, when you study them, you study the great sports leaders.
Yeah.
In many, many cases, prior to their coaching career, they were teachers. They were teaching chemistry or algebra, or in Coach John Wooden's case, he was an English teacher, and he viewed himself his whole life as an English teacher, really, not a basketball coach. And so I think that that's an important attribute then when leaders begin to think upon themselves as teachers, and that means that they must be committed to lifelong learning because the world is changing so rapidly. And if we're not on the cutting edge of learning, you know, we're going to be pretty much flushed out of the parade of life. So it's vital that leaders keep learning and above all remember that they are in the teaching profession.
Yeah, I think that's powerful. And I was struck by this idea of boldness. You know, I see a lot of lists about leadership, but talk a little bit about this importance of having boldness as a leader at all levels of the organization.
You know, when you study, and that's true, Verne, you don't have to be the CEO. You know, there's areas of leadership at every level for every person. And when you really study the great leaders, they were bold. They were not afraid to make decisions. They made hard decisions. They made courageous decisions. They made decisions that weren't all that popular at the time. Abraham Lincoln would be a perfect example. You know, he took such heavy criticism and was attacked unmercifully, you know, for decisions. Harry Truman comes to mind in the White House. One bold decision after the other. And in so many cases, you know, he was just ripped apart and vilified. But we look back now, and those decisions were the right ones. So I encourage leaders not to sit on the sidelines. When they see a need, they see a situation that needs leadership, don't wait for somebody else. Don't wait for a voice from above or a letter from the White House. You know, step up and be the leader. I think that's awfully important in our country today. We need those men and women at all levels, at all ages, you know, to be aggressive in their leadership.
Yeah, it's too easy, I think, just to sit on the sideline and
somebody else will do it.
Exactly.
And, you know, it's not. That's not for me. I would say, yeah, it is for you. You know, if you feel a stirring within, if you feel a calling, you know, that means get moving, you know, step up and lead. And these 7 principles that we talked about, Verne, will come in handy, you know, when you make that decision to be a leader. In my study and all that I've observed over the years, I find that those 7 qualities, you know, are absolutely locked in granite with every great leader that I've ever learned or studied about or seen in action. So.
And which one of the 92 books are they encapsulated in? I know there's one that particularly...
Well, I wrote a book not long ago. It's now out in paperback. It's called Leadership Excellence, in which I took these 7 qualities and expanded them and, you know, incorporated some of my favorite stories and anecdotes and illustrations. So I think that book with Barber Publishing probably is the one that captures in most detail what we're talking about here.
And what struck me is the importance of you living it. That final story you told about bringing the franchise to Orlando, I didn't understand the obstacles that you were up against. Just share quickly that story, what you guys were up against bringing it down here to Orlando.
Well, I had been in the NBA for a long time. I'd been in with the 76ers for 12 years, but I was restless. I needed a new challenge. The ultimate challenge in my business is starting up your own team, an expansion team. So I hooked up with some business leaders here in Central Florida in June of '86. Sold our home in Philadelphia, packed up, moved down here with 6 children at the time. There was no assurance of anything. Orlando at that time was kind of a small Central Florida town, but with big dreams and big ambitions. Anyway, I spent the first 10 months here getting in front of every group I could, asking them to make $100 deposits on season tickets to a team that did not exist in a city that had never had Major League Sports, in a city where there was no arena to play in a league that had not agreed to add more teams.
But no problem.
And so for 10 months, I rattled around Central Florida, you know, in front of any group that would have me, explaining to these people what this arena was going to look like and what our uniforms were going to look like and on opening night in 3 years, when Larry Bird and the Celtics are here to play our Magic. We did have a nickname, by the way. You know, you don't want to miss it. I mean, that was the gist of what I was sharing, this vision that I had. Fortunately, a lot of people bought in. We ended up with 14,000 deposits on season tickets.
Unbelievable.
Prior to our presentation to the league. And 10 months, almost to the day from when we started, the NBA agreed to add 4 new teams, 4 expansion teams, including the Orlando Magic, to start play in the fall of 1989. That was a very, very special time in my life, but I learned so much about leadership, particularly in this area of vision and then communicating your vision.
Got it. And the number 7 principle, I was struck by, everyone talks about servant leadership, but you've put a unique spin on one of those words, and share why.
Yeah, we do hear a lot about a servant-hearted leader, but I stress the verb form, Verne, a serving-hearted leader. It denotes action to me, and that's really what a servant-hearted leader does. She's not on the sideline, you know, yelling and screaming down into the audience. You know, a serving-hearted leader is down in the trenches and helping others, trying to advance the careers of others, trying to help this organization fulfill all its promise and live to its full potential. A serving-hearted leader is not there to intimidate and browbeat and maneuver and manipulate people, but with a heart of love and a heart of concern to serve. And when that leader comes along, Verne, I'm telling you, things change, families change, and organizations change, and churches change, and schools change, and I think nations change as well. When a serving heart mentality really invades, you know, it's a good sign that good things are going to happen.
Well, it was obvious, and I shared it with you as we were going to this interview, that you're living this. The audience felt it, Pat, that you love them, that you've got that kind of serving heart, and got one of just a handful of standing ovations, spontaneous standing ovations we've seen in the decade plus we've run this summit. So, hats off.
Well, thank you, Verne. Keep up the good work.
Will do.
An impressive group of people, including young people, and I was so thrilled that a number of them came up.
Good.
A couple of youngsters from Canada,
and
British Columbia, and they wanted to talk about their life and a life of leadership. So it was a very rewarding experience for me.
Good, Pat. Thank you so much.
Good to see you.
You bet.